All right, welcome back to Module 4. Now we're going to be talking about dirty data and how to deal with it. So we are going to look at a couple use cases, one involving zip codes, one involving phone numbers, case statements for recoding your variables, and handling nulls. So let's get started. All right, zip codes. So you'd typically use zip codes in a model for something like optimizing acquisition, where certain zip codes are probably more affluent than others, and you're going to see a return on investment depending on where you put your marketing spend towards different zip codes. But to use them appropriately, you'd need to make sure that they're all formatted correctly when you're putting them in your model. So if you are missing leading zeros, or some of the people have zip +4, those people would end up in a different group from the people who just have zip, even though they're actually in the same zip code. And so here we're going to look at how you deal with it in SQLite. This may be different from how it would be handled in a different SQL server. However, the ideas and the concepts are the same. And so, these are things now that you're going to think about when you're looking at your data, and you're going to know that it's something to look out for. And, you can Google for different syntax for the specific SQL server that you're in. But now let's look at how I do this in SQLite. All right, so we have zip codes in the customer table. So let's just take a look at how our zip codes are formatted. Okay, so zip code is over here. We see that in the third row, we're missing a leading zero. We also see that for places like Canada, they don't have a zip code like we do in the United States. So fixing these zip codes is going to be specifically for zip codes in the United States. And honestly, what I do here is I would go to SQLite documentation and I'd look at all the different ways that I can handle strings. So SQLite has a built-in printf, and this allows us to deal with string formatting. So this is going to be similar to when you are writing regex functions to make your strings formatted the way you want in terms of words. Here we're dealing with numbers, but it's the same concept, and it's something that you're going to deal with again and again. And so if I was to go through this, I know I'm going to need to format my zip codes. I can look down and see the documentation, and this percent symbol is going to allow me to substitute values. Also, if I was to go down, I see that this 0 right here is pre-penned as many 0 characters to numeric substitution as necessary to expand the value. Well, that's exactly what I want to do, right? In the case where we had that zip code that was only 4 digits, I want to put a 0 at the beginning. So I want a 5-digit zip code with a 0 in front of it. So it will take a lot of reading that documentation to understand all the different things that you can do with it. And honestly, you're going to you're going to always be finding new use cases. So it's literally something that you want to be aware of that it exists. You want to be able to identify when you'd need to use something that involves string formatting, and then go look at the documentation and play around with it. There's going to be more than one way, typically, that will get you to what you're trying to achieve, but you just need to find one that works for all your cases in a specific column. So here we know that the function that we just saw in the SQL documentation was printf. And so I'm going to put my function in quotes. And I know that I can use the % symbol and 0, and it will prepend those zeros, and I want it to be 5 digits. And the column that I'm updating is zip code. I'm going to call this zip code, and it's in the customer table. Okay, so now let's limit this. Okay, so let's see what happened. I'm now seeing that I have 5 digits. The 0 was placed in front just like I wanted it here. But I'm also seeing strings with just 5 zeros. And I'm also seeing that those zip codes that were zip +4 are now only 5 digits. And so this was going to prepend a 0 and take the first 5 digits. So actually the formatting now is fine and everybody has a 5-digit zip code except for those people who were outside of the United States. Those were made all zeros. But that's fine because we weren't going to be able to give them a correct 5-digit zip code anyways. All right, let's add some other columns here so that we can see this in context. So we'll take the customer ID, we'll take the original zip code, and then we'd need to change this because you can't have multiple columns with the same name. And then let's look up what the state was called. So we'll also pull in state and country. All right, so now we're manually inspecting the data. So people who are from the United States look correct. People who are from Canada, we know that those aren't correct. This person is from Ecuador, and we did get a 5-digit zip code for them. So we want to make sure that if we were to do an analysis, we probably want to limit this. So we'll just say where country like United States. Okay. So now we're only getting people back from the United States. We see that the zip code has the zeros in front, and all of these are 5 digits. And so if we did further analysis, there is a chance that we might find an edge case that we might need to fix. But this looks pretty good, and I'd continue along if I was building a model for acquisition targeting, a decision tree like I was talking about previously. I'd move forward with this and put it in my model and see if this worked and if it was something that actually came into the model. And then if there were some problems, or I found later on that I actually didn't clean up everything that I needed, I'd go back again, read the documentation, and update my function in the SQL query to get it more correct. Okay, so now we're going to talk about cleaning up phone numbers, which is a similar problem to the zip codes. This is another type of string that we have here that we want to clean up. So some notes on cleaning phone numbers. Although I'd use zip codes in a model, there are some instances where I can think of that I'd use zip codes in a model, I wouldn't necessarily ever be using phone numbers in a model because they're unique to each person, so it wouldn't really help me to infer anything. However, there may be instances where you have to clean up phone numbers just so that they're actually correct in the database for somebody else's uses. If the company that you're working for does phone outreach and those phone numbers need to get to the sales team so that they can call customers. And it's just good to do another example of some type of string formatting. So phone numbers you'll a lot of times see that some have a leading one, some have parentheses around the area code, some have dashes, some have periods. There's a lot of different things that you could encounter in trying to clean these up. And so again, this is something where you'd want to use a regex function, which is not actually supported in SQLite. Actually, that printf is the closest to that type of function that we're going to see here. I've put a link to the regex checker, which I still use to this day when I am writing a regular expression, and you can put what you're proposing as a regular expression at the top and your data in the bottom, and it'll show you which instances are your regex function is actually working for and what still needs to be cleaned up so that you can try something else. And it's sort of that same thing where you're going to go to regex documentation and you're going to read about what each of the characters mean in terms of how it's going to format those strings for you. Okay, so let's get rid of this. And we will again look at the customer table because that's where our phone numbers are. Okay, so the first thing that we notice is that there are a lot of nulls. Not everyone has provided us a phone number. So let's go through and say where phone is not null so that we're only looking at people who have given us a phone number so we can see what types of problems we have. Okay, so these look good. This one has an extra A in it. Oh, here's one with the parentheses around. Okay, these guys are in standard telephone formatting. Okay, so the way that I would personally attack this problem is to first look for all the phone numbers that are exactly 10 digits. And then SQLite has a Glob operator. If you were to look at this, so introduction to the SQLite Glob operator, it works like a like operator. you know how we have the strings where we say like United States in the where clause, and then it's only giving us people back who are from the United States. And the glob operator determines whether a string matches a specific pattern. One thing we want to note is that this is going to be case sensitive, and we're able to use the wildcard like we were talking about before. That percent symbol was a wildcard. And when we were using like, it meant if the percent was in front of United States, it meant that something could come before, or if it was after United States, it meant that something could come after that. But here we have the wildcard's question mark, and that's going to match exactly one character, and the asterisk is going to match any number of characters. So let's look at how we'd use that. All right, so to get those 10 characters, what we want to do is actually tell SQLite to only take things that are numbers. And so just like in regex, a number character is just denoted as, you know, telling it we want something 0 to 9. Okay, and that's how it's written. So here, since SQLite has the glob operator, you might start with something like this. So select phone from customer where phone is not null, right? Because we know we have so many nulls that it's going to be very difficult to look at our data unless we remove those. And phone not glob 0 through 9, 0 through 9. So basically there's 10 of these, and I want to see what type of phone numbers I have that aren't those 10 character strings. Okay, so like we said, we have a variable in here, we have a period, we have some standard formatted phones. Do we have other stuff in here? Okay, no. All right, so let's just take a look at our phones. We already know that we're missing a lot of phones, so we will run where phone is not null, so we can just see the phone numbers that we have. Okay, so we have some 10 digits. We have, this one has an extra A in it. I know there's one with a period in there, and then there's some that are in standard formatting. So we're going to use replace, and we're going to slowly remove all the characters that are a problem. And so to do that, we'll be using this replace that looks exactly like the replace in Python. Whew. Okay, so let's pick a character and replace it, and then we will build up from there. So let's replace that period first. So phone, comma, the character that we're replacing is a period, and we're replacing it with nothing. So I'm going to put nothing in between there. We'll call this new phone from customer. And we'll also put phone in there so we can see that the period actually was replaced. Oh. Where phone is not null. we'll say and phone like, and we know there's stuff before it and stuff after that period, but we know that period's in there. Okay, so here is our result. And we see that the old one has the period in there and the new one does not. So now we also know that there was an A that we needed to replace as well, right? So we're going to start building on this. We'll get rid of this line because we know that there were only one of these. So if we put this restriction next time, we wouldn't be able to see that our A was removed. And actually, let's just set that up right now. And phone like our wildcards that say it can be anything before and anything afterwards. And so now we're going to do another replace statement. Okay, so this one is we are replacing an A with nothing. Okay, so let's run this and see if we get the line we want back. Boom, there it is. Okay, so we have our A in the old phone and it's now missing from this other phone. But so we still have a lot of cleaning up to do, right? So we need to do it again. And we need to get rid of all of the characters that that make it different from just a 10 digit so that everything can be in the same format. So now I'm going to get rid of that first parenthesis, right? Because we had a ton of phone numbers that were formatted like normal. So, yep. Okay, so now we're getting rid of just that first parenthesis and we're going to take a look. And so there were enough of these that we should be able to find it without having to write a specific where statement. Okay, so let's go down and find one of these guys. There was one. See, look, okay, we had a beginning parentheses here. It is not over here. So now we're just going to keep going. We are going to create another replace. Open parentheses. We come over here. Let's get rid of that last parenthesis. And again, we're replacing it with nothing. And then we don't need to take another look because we know this is working. So we're going to just replace again. We're going to go over, comma. Okay, so we got rid of that back parenthesis. Now let's get rid of the hyphen. So hyphen, it's going to go away. We're going to replace it with nothing. And then let's run this again and see if we still have any problems with our data. Okay, where are we? So these are all looking good. Oh, I still have an A here. Okay, you know what else we're noticing too? There is a space here, and there's not a space up here. So we have one more replace to do. Space, and replace with no space. Okay. Look at that. All these phone numbers are 10 digits. So I hope you found this super useful. There is a ton that you can learn in terms of working with strings, but this was a good intro into the types of things that you're going to see, how you'd sort of think through the problem. We didn't try and fix the whole thing at once. We started with, okay, we're going to get these all formatted as 10 digits. And we could have decided that instead we wanted them all in parentheses with the hyphens, and we could have, worked in a different direction to try and get them all formatted that way. But I hope that this was super helpful.